A cry in the wreckage, the wind howled across the rocky valley. Sharp, cold air cut through the trees like knives. Jack, a human explorer, was gathering supplies from the forest floor. His boots crunched over dry leaves and his breath steamed in the freezing night. He had been living alone on this alien planet for almost a year, crash-landed, forgotten, and surviving day by day. Suddenly, he stopped. There it was again. A sound. A cry. It wasn't human, it wasn't an animal either, it was soft, shaky, desperate, like a baby, or someone dying. Jack turned his head. The sound came from the direction of the northern cliffs, where the rocks were jagged and no one dared to go. He listened again. The cry was clearer now. It echoed through the trees like a broken whisper. Without thinking, Jack grabbed his flashlight and sprinted toward it. After 20 minutes of climbing and slipping over rocks, he saw it. A crashed ship. Small, broken black smoke rising from its shattered hull. The metal was still hot, glowing red. The air smelled like burning wires and scorched fuel. And then, he saw her. A figure crawled out of the wreckage, one arm dragging, the other wrapped tightly around something. Her skin was pale violet, glowing faintly under the moonlight. She had long silver hair tangled with blood and dirt. Her eyes, wide and glowing blue, were full of fear. Jack froze. An alien woman. She tried to speak but coughed instead. Blood stained her lips. Jack raised both hands, showing he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said gently. "I heard crying. Are you okay?" The woman looked behind her, trembling. She pulled forward what she had been protecting, 3 tiny alien children huddled close to her chest. They were shivering, covered in ash, eyes wide with terror. Jack's heart dropped. "Kids!" The woman whispered something in her language. Her voice cracked. She was begging, but not for help. She was begging him not to take her children. Jack took off his jacket and placed it gently over the triplets. "They're cold. Let me help." The alien woman narrowed her eyes. She didn't trust him, but she was too weak to move, too tired to fight. Her body shook as she collapsed forward. Jack caught her just in time. "Damn it," he muttered. "I can't leave you all here." He picked her up carefully. She was light, thinner than he expected. The triplets followed him, barely walking, holding onto the jacket like it was their only hope. Jack carried the mother and led the children down the cliffs, slowly, step by step, careful not to slip. Every few seconds he glanced back at the crash, wondering who else might have been watching. Ships don't fall from the sky for no reason. By the time they reached his shelter, night had fully fallen. Jack lit the fire quickly and laid the alien woman on a soft mat. Her breathing was shallow. She had burns on her legs and a deep cut on her back. The triplets sat silently by her side, staring at Jack with glowing blue eyes. He handed them water. One of them flinched. Another started to cry. Jack knelt down slowly. "It's okay, I won't hurt you. Your mom needs rest. She's safe now." The smallest child reached out, just for a second, and touched Jack's hand. The boy's skin was cool and smooth. His eyes met Jack's, full of confusion, but also hope. Jack looked at the alien woman, then at the kids. "I don't know who you are," he whispered, "but I won't let you die here." Outside, in the darkness, something growled. Jack's eyes snapped toward the door. He grabbed his weapon and stood guard. Someone, or something, had followed them. "Don't take my children." The fire crackled softly inside Jack's small shelter. The alien woman lay unconscious, her silver hair spread out like threads of moonlight. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Jack had cleaned her wounds with what little supplies he had. Burn cream, gauze, clean water. He wasn't a doctor, but right now, he was all she had. The 3 alien children sat close to their mother, their glowing blue eyes watching Jack without blinking. They hadn't said a word, not in any language he could understand. Jack gave them warm soup in small cups. "Oh, First, they stared at it like it was poison, but one of the little ones, the middle child, dipped a finger into the soup and tasted it. Then suddenly all three began to sip, fast and hungrily. Jack smiled a little. Good, you're hungry. That's a good sign. Just as he turned to check on the mother again, her eyes snapped open. She sat up in panic, her body still weak, but her heart in full terror. Her eyes scanned the room wildly until they locked on Jack. Her hands flew out, pulling the children behind her like a protective shield. No, please, don't take them. Her voice was raspy, broken, but the fear was clear. She didn't understand his language, but her meaning was obvious. Jack raised his hands quickly. Hey, easy. I'm not here to hurt you. But the alien mother didn't believe him. Her arms trembled as she pushed her children behind her, ready to die protecting them. Her body was still bleeding, still healing, but her will was unshakable. Jack slowly knelt on the floor. He picked up the empty soup cup and showed her, then pointed to the kids. They ate. I helped. You're all safe. Still, her breathing was fast. Her whole body shook. Jack then did something he hadn't done in a long time. He took off his gloves, reached into his bag, and pulled out a small metal necklace. It was his sister's, a symbol of peace from Earth's old colony days. He placed it on the floor between them and pushed it gently toward her. Safe, he said. I promise. The alien woman stared at it, then at him. Something in her eyes softened. Just a little. Her arms loosened around the children. Her breathing slowed. The oldest triplet touched her shoulder and whispered something in their alien tongue. The woman closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, she looked at Jack. Not with trust, but with less fear. Later that night, Jack added more wood to the fire. The shelter was warm now. Outside, the wind howled and something growled again in the distance. He stayed awake, keeping watch. His rifle rested across his lap. He didn't know what shot that ship out of the sky. He didn't know who the woman was, or who her enemies might be. But he knew one thing. She was scared of more than just him. As dawn crept over the sky, the woman whispered something. Jack looked up. She pointed to herself. Sihra, she said softly. Then she pointed to her children. Talan, Mira, Jock. Jack smiled gently. He pointed to his own chest. Jack. Sihra didn't smile, but she didn't look afraid anymore. The youngest child, Jock, walked over to Jack and sat beside him. He leaned against Jack's arm and let out a soft sound, almost like a purr. Jack's eyes widened. He glanced at Sihra. Her eyes met his. For the first time, she nodded. They still didn't trust him completely. They didn't know if he was a friend or just a quiet storm before more pain. But for one night, and maybe one more day, they were safe. The morning light barely touched the edges of the valley. Thick gray clouds rolled in from the mountains, and cold mist wrapped around the trees. Jack stood outside his small shelter, eyes scanning the hills with his rifle ready. He didn't trust the silence. Sihra and her triplets were still inside, resting. Their sleep had been broken. Soft whimpers from the children, low whispers from Sihra. She hadn't told him everything yet. But Jack knew this much. They were running from something. He could feel it in her eyes. That wasn't just fear. That was survival. By mid-morning, Jack started building a trap line around the shelter. Not for animals, for watchers. He placed wires, motion alarms, and a few old drones with broken cameras. They wouldn't fight anything, but they'd warn him if something moved. When he came back, the 3 alien children were awake, playing with stones by the fire. They had drawn pictures in the dust, a big hand, a little house, and 4 small stick figures with tails. Jack knelt beside them. Is this us? Talan, the oldest boy, looked up and gave a tiny nod. Sihra sat nearby, her back against the wall. Her wounds were healing, but she looked tired, too tired for someone who had slept all night. You didn't rest, Jack said quietly. Sihra slowly shook her head. Then she pointed to the hills beyond the window. She said something in her language, sharp, tense. Her voice dropped low like a warning. Jack could only understand one thing. They were being hunted. Later that day, it began to rain. Not earth rain. The drops were thick and purple, and they smelled faintly like burnt metal. Jack pulled down his shutters. The shelter shook with every gust of wind. He checked the perimeter alarm. Then he checked it again. Still nothing. But Jack didn't relax. Something was wrong. That night, Sihra finally spoke more. Through hand signs and broken words, she told Jack a little of what had happened. She was a soldier once, not a killer, but a leader of peace talks. She believed her people and the humans could work together, but her voice was hated by the warlords. When she refused to help them destroy a human outpost, they branded her a traitor. She fled. Pregnant. Alone. And now, they wanted her dead. Not just her children too, they say. My babies might carry shame, Sihra whispered, her eyes full of tears. But they are my life. Jack looked at the triplets, sleeping in a tight bundle under a blanket. They're not shame, he said softly. They're the only reason I haven't gone crazy on this planet. Sihra stared at him. For a long time she said nothing. Then in a shaking voice she asked, "Why help us?" Jack smiled, tired but honest. Because no one helped me when I fell here. And maybe I was waiting for someone who needed me. That night, as Jack sat near the door keeping watch, the alarm beeped, just once, a soft click, barely there. Jack froze. Then, another beep. He grabbed his weapon and peered out through the small window slit. Far away in the dark rain, a shape moved, tall, thin, watching. It didn't step forward. It just stood there, like it was counting heartbeats. Jack's grip tightened. His voice dropped low. "Sihra, wake the kids. We may need to leave now." Inside the shelter, Sihra moved fast. The children woke without crying, as if they had been trained. She wrapped them in cloaks and whispered to them in a calm, firm voice, "No panic, just urgency." Jack placed a hand on the door, ready to open it, but the shape in the rain had already gone. Gone. Without sound. Like a ghost. Jack didn't sleep that night. Neither did Sihra. They sat across from each other in silence, watching the children sleep. One alien mother. One lonely human. Both hiding. Both hunted, but both not alone anymore. The sun didn't rise the next morning. Not really. Only a weak red glow leaked through the thick clouds, making the sky look bruised. Jack stood by the entrance of the shelter, eyes wide open, heart pounding. He hadn't slept at all. Neither had Sihra. Both had kept watch while the children slept in silence. Even little Yok, who always made soft humming sounds in his sleep, had been quiet. Something had changed in the air. Something was coming. Just before noon, Jack climbed a nearby hill with his scope. He scanned the forest line beyond the cliffs. Then he saw it. A drone. Small, black, and silent, flying just low enough to avoid most scanners. It hovered, paused, then turned directly toward Jack's location. Jack ducked. His thoughts raced. "They've found us." He rushed back down, mud and leaves sticking to his boots. At the shelter, Sihra was already waiting with the children ready, cloaked, boots on, quiet. She had known before he said a word. "They are here," she whispered. Jack nodded. "We run. No other way." But they didn't even get the chance. Attack came before sunset. First the sound. A deep thump from above. Then a scream from the sky as two dark ships broke through the clouds and hovered just over the valley. Then, explosions. Jack grabbed Sihra's hand and shouted, "Go, back." Tunnel. He had built a small escape path behind the shelter. An old mining route filled with rocks and narrow twists. He hadn't used it in months. Now it was their only hope. As Sihra and the children crawled into the tunnel, Jack turned and faced the door. He didn't run. He picked up his pulse rifle, dropped to one knee, and waited. The front door blew, apart in seconds. Smoke filled the shelter. Red lasers lit the room. 2 armored figures stepped inside, tall with glowing red eyes under helmets. They scanned the room and saw only Jack. "Where is the woman?" one of them said in a deep, alien voice. Jack smiled coldly. "You're too late." Then he fired. The blast hit one enemy straight in the chest. The second fired back, grazing Jack's shoulder. But Jack didn't stop. He ducked, rolled, and kept shooting, fighting like a man who had nothing left to lose, and everything to protect. Meanwhile, deep inside the tunnel, Sihra led the children forward. Her breathing was heavy. Blood dripped again from her old wounds. But she didn't stop. Talon helped her. The oldest triplet now held her hand, guiding her. Mira carried a small pouch Jack had given them with food and water. Jacques kept looking back. "Papa," he whispered. Sihra didn't answer. Not yet. Back in the shelter, Jack was on the floor, bleeding, hiding behind a flipped table. Sparks flew. The smell of smoke filled his nose. The first attacker was down. The second one limped toward him, gun shaking. Jack's hands trembled too. His blood poured down his arm, but his eyes were calm. "Come on," he whispered. "One more step." As the soldier raised his weapon, Jack pressed the button on a small device in his palm. Boom. A hidden grenade under the floor exploded, ripping the room apart. Silence followed. Then coughing. Jack was still alive. Barely. Hours later, as night returned, Sihra peeked out of the other end of the tunnel. The valley below was quiet again. Smoke still rose from the shelter ruins. No ships, no soldiers. But where was Jack? She left the children in the trees and ran, stumbling, crying out his name again and again. She found him among the rubble, burned, bruised, and covered in ash. His eyes opened slowly when she touched his face. "You okay?" he asked, voice dry and weak. Sihra nodded, tears in her eyes. "You saved them," she whispered. Jack smiled faintly. "Of course I did. They called me Dad." She leaned down and kissed his forehead, a soft, alien gesture of thanks. Then, she helped him up. The children ran to him, all three hugging him tightly. Talon whispered, "You're our papa now." Jack didn't answer. He didn't need to. His arms wrapped around them all. The valley was silent. Smoke still rose from the broken remains of Jack's shelter. The air smelled of metal, ash, and burnt earth. The fire had stopped, but the damage remained. Jack leaned against a rock, breathing hard. His shoulder was bandaged with strips of cloth. His left leg was swollen and bleeding, but he didn't care. The triplets were safe, and Sihra was alive. That was all that mattered. They moved carefully, staying low under trees. Sihra helped Jack walk, her arm around his waist, her face still bruised but strong. The children followed quietly, holding each other's hands. They needed a new place to hide. Jack knew an old ruin deeper in the hills, a cave once used for mining before the planet was abandoned. It wasn't much, but it had strong walls, dry ground, and only one entrance, perfect for defense. When they reached the cave, night had already fallen. Sihra checked the inside first, making sure it was safe. Jack sat outside, watching the stars above with tired eyes. One of the children, Mira, sat beside him. She looked up and asked softly, "Papa, will the bad ones come again?" Jack looked at her. Her face was small and hopeful, but her eyes held the kind of fear no child should carry. He placed a hand on her head gently. "They might," he said honestly, "but I'll be here. I won't let them take you. Never." Inside the cave, Sihra lit a small glowstone and laid out food. Jack slowly limped in, followed by the kids. The firelight danced on the walls, showing ancient markings carved by miners long ago. This place, Sira said, feels like a place where warriors rest. Jack chuckled. Then I hope we rest better than we fight. She smiled faintly, then looked down. Back there. You didn't have to fight, you could have run. Jack looked at her, confused. And leave you? Leave them? He shook his head. I've been alone long enough. I didn't even know I was waiting. Until you fell from the sky. That night the cave was quiet. The children curled up together, their breathing soft. Sci-Fi sat beside Jack, wrapping his arm with tighter cloth. His wound was bad. The infection was trying to spread. You need medicine, she said. Jack nodded slowly. Yeah, but we don't have any. Sihra's eyes narrowed. She looked toward the dark forest outside the cave. There's a plant. My people used to use it. It can help. But it grows where the hunters live. At dawn, before the children woke, Sihra was already gone. Jack woke with a start, panic in his eyes. He limped to the entrance and looked out, shouting her name. No answer. The triplets ran to him. Where is Mama? Talon asked. Jack's heart pounded. She went to find medicine alone. Hours passed. The sky turned from gold to gray. Jack sat near the cave opening, rifle in hand, eyes on the trees. The children sat beside him, silent. Then they heard something. Footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Running. Sihra burst through the bushes, breathless and bleeding from her side. She held a glowing plant in her hands. Behind her, 2 hunters. Jack stood fast and aimed. The rifle shook in his hands, but his shot was true. 1 hunter fell. The second raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Sihra leapt at him, slicing his throat with a hidden blade she had kept since her escape. He dropped. Hard. Blood covered the dust. Sihra stood over him, panting, shaking. Jack looked at her with wide eyes. You fought like fire, he said. She dropped the blade and fell to her knees, the plant still clutched in her hand. For you, she whispered. For our family. That night, Jack lay weak, but smiling. The plant had been crushed into a paste and applied to his wound. It burned, then cooled. The children lay beside him. Sihra sat nearby, watching over them. Jack looked at her. You didn't run, he whispered. She touched his hand. You're the only place I have left to run to, she said softly. Days passed. The fire inside the cave burned low, but the warmth between them grew stronger. Jack's wound had stopped bleeding. The pain was still there, but he could walk now, slowly, with help. Sihra stayed close, often sitting beside him without saying a word. Her eyes watched everything, the sky, the trees, the triplets, and Jack. She no longer looked like a frightened refugee. She looked like a mother, a fighter, and something more. One evening, as the sky turned golden, Jack and Sihra sat outside, the cave, watching the children play. Jacques was pretending to fly with sticks. Talon built a small stone tower. Mira was trying to catch floating pollen with her hands. Jack smiled. They're happy. Sihra nodded. Because they feel safe. Jack looked down at his hands, the old burns, the cuts, the tired skin. I never thought I'd become this, he said softly. A father, a protector, a friend to someone not even from my world. Sihra turned to him slowly. We are more alike than you think, Jack laughed. I doubt that. Sihra's voice was quiet. Your people think my name means lost one in their records, but it's not. Jack glanced at her. It's not? She shook her head. It means Ashborn. I was given that name after I survived a city burning in war. They said I rose from ashes, a survivor, but unwanted. She looked down. Some even called me Mother of Ashes. Jack was silent for a moment. Then, in a gentle voice, he said, That's not who you are to me. She looked at him confused. To me, Jack said. You're the one who saved my life. You're strong. You're brave. You're family." That night, Talon crawled over to Jack's bedroll and rested beside him. Jock followed. Then Mira lay down beside Sihira, holding her mother's hand. Before closing their eyes, Jock whispered, "Papa?" "Yes," Jack replied. "Do you like Mama?" Jack's heart skipped. Sihira looked up fast, blinking. Jack smiled awkwardly. I like her a lot." Sierra's lips curved into the softest smile Jack had ever seen on her face. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. In the morning, Jack carved a small wooden figure for each child. He wasn't good at art, but he tried. A bird for Jock, a star for Mira, a hammer for Talon. He handed them out one by one. The children gasped and hugged them tight. Mira looked up and asked, "What about Mama?" Jack paused. Then, without a word, he walked back to his tools and carved a new one, a heart, wrapped in a ring of fire. He handed it to Sihira. She stared at it, confused. "What is it?" Jack smiled. "It's you. Strong, warm, burning, but never destroyed." Sihira held the carving in her hands gently, like it was something holy. Later that day, Sihira spoke to the children in her language. Jack couldn't understand, but he watched their faces as they nodded, smiled, and clapped softly. She turned to Jack. They wish to call you a new name." Jack raised an eyebrow. "A name?" She nodded. "In our tongue, Thalanvek means chosen one who protects the nest." Jack chuckled. "That's a long name." Sihira smiled. "We can shorten it." She stepped closer, looked into his eyes, and softly said, "They call you father, but now I call you mate." Jack froze. The air went quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. He looked at the woman who had once crawled out of fire and wreckage, and now stood before him like a queen. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. Sihira leaned in and whispered, "I've never been more sure." The children danced around them in a circle, laughing and singing something Jack didn't understand. But it didn't matter, because in that moment, on an alien world far from Earth, he wasn't lost anymore. He had a family and a new name. Weeks passed. The forest healed, so did the family. Jack had built a new shelter, stronger, warmer, hidden under thick trees and rocks. It wasn't much, but it was home. The triplets had grown stronger too. Jock no longer hid when he heard loud sounds. Mira sang softly when she helped with chores. Talon, now braver, practiced using tools like Jack. Sihra smiled more often now. One morning, while cooking food over the fire, Jack looked up at the clear sky and froze. A ship. A real one. Big. Clean. Human-made. It moved slowly across the sky, scanning the surface. A rescue ship. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He stood up fast and waved his hands in the air. The children followed him out of the shelter, looking up with wide eyes. The ship circled once, then twice. A light blinked on the side. They had been seen. The next day, the rescue crew arrived. 3 humans in shiny suits stepped out, shocked to find Jack alive. They scanned him, checked his wounds, and asked a dozen questions. What happened? How did you survive this long? Are you alone? Jack turned and pointed behind him. No, he said. Sierra stepped out of the shelter, her silver hair catching the light. The children followed close, clutching her cloak. The crew's eyes widened. You're with aliens? Jack nodded. They're my family. The officers pulled him aside. Listen, Jack, we can bring you back to Earth, give you treatment, food, safety. You don't have to stay here. Jack looked at Sihira. She stood under a tree, her eyes steady, but a little sad. She expected him to leave. Jack turned back to the officer. No, he said. I already have everything I need. That night. Jack sat by the fire with Sihira beside him and the children curled up in blankets. The rescue ship had flown away, leaving them behind by choice. Jack had refused Earth. He had chosen them. Sierra placed her hand over his. You gave up your world. For us? Jack shook his head. No. I found my world. Because of you. Later, while the children slept, Sierra brought out something she had made. A woven necklace made from forest vines and metal wire. She placed it around Jack's neck. It means bound to the nest in my language, she whispered. Jack smiled. Then let me give you something too. He reached into his old bag and pulled out a simple silver ring from his Earth uniform, a survival token, once meaningless. Now he placed it gently on her finger. No matter what world we're on, he said, you're my home. In the months that followed, life changed. Together they hunted, cooked, and explored new caves. Together, they taught the children stories in both languages. Together they laughed and built something stronger than walls, a family. Sometimes Sierra would still wake in the night from old memories. Sometimes Jack would stare into the stars, remembering the Earth he left behind. But every time those dark thoughts came, a tiny hand would hold his, or Sierra would rest her head on his shoulder, and the world would feel right again. One evening, as golden light poured through the forest leaves, Mira sat beside Jack and asked softly, Are we still hiding? Jack smiled. No, little star, he said. We're not hiding anymore. She tilted her head. Then what are we doing? Jack looked around at the home they had built. At last, he said, we're living.